Hi, I'm Kate Breen. Welcome to another week of Face to Face. Today I'm delighted to have Jeffrey Grierson here. Jeffrey's a Senior Research Fellow at Trobe Uni in the Archers Centre. So tell us a bit about what you do there, Jeffrey. Like, what's your role?
Well, I'm a researcher, so I basically spend many hours a week designing and running and reporting on social research projects. So
Yep.
We're a social research centre. We basically look at a whole range of issues to do with sexual health.
Okay. And it's funded by the government?
Yeah, well, the centre as a whole is funded by a whole range of institutions and grants, but the bit that I work in, which is the Living with HIV program at Archers.
Oh, okay, that's what you're responsible for.
Yeah, is funded by the Commonwealth Government to do a national program of social research around what it's like to live with HIV.
Wow.
So,
fascinating subject.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing that for?
As a job?
Yeah, as a job.
As a job for about 6 years.
Yeah, and before that as a
hobby.
hobby.
That's right. I did my PhD at Archers as well before then.
Oh, right.
So that was another.
So you've been researching this for years.
Yeah. Quite a
lot of
time.
information stored up there, I can imagine.
Probably I've forgotten more than I know at the moment.
So is there major projects that you work on?
Yeah, we do. As I say, it's a national research program. One of the major projects that we do is HIV Futures, which is sort of like, I'm not allowed to say it's the census of people with HIV because it's not required,
Right.
but it's sort of like that. It's
Yeah, and that's this report here.
That's the one.
How often do you put this out?
We do this every 2 years.
Yep.
It's basically a survey that's sent out, and there's one out at the moment, to lots of people with HIV around the country through lots of organisations and settings that we distribute it. And it's basically a survey that gives us an idea of what it's actually like to be living with HIV at the moment.
Right, and trends and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so we're in the 5th one at the moment, but it's a project. I'm really fond of it as a project because I think
oh, good.
It's something that actually puts faces and experiences on our ideas about what HIV is. So
Exactly.
we don't just talk about health and treatments. It's not that sort of study. It has that stuff in, but we also look at things like, what's your housing like? What are your finances like? How much support do you get from your friends? Do you have pets?
Yeah. So it's everything.
It's everything about living with HIV. So trying to really think about people with HIV as not a medical condition. I mean, it's not that these people are an illness. That we're talking about real people, and if we want to provide services, support, and understand what living with HIV is like, we need to know about everything about people's lives.
That's fascinating because it is quite a large report. Like that's a lot of information in there.
Yeah, and the survey is quite long too. It's about 40 pages, so it's not an easy survey. I'm always astonished by how much effort and time people will actually put into completing the survey.
Yeah. How many people do you normally get
in
each
the
year?
In the last Futures, we got 1,000 people around the country that completed the survey. That's around 8% of the entire population of people with HIV.
Yeah.
So yeah, for 1,000 people to be putting in that much work, because I think they see what comes out of it as well. I mean, it's not.
Well, this must be invaluable just for anyone kind of doing anything with HIV people. This kind of information is crucial, isn't it?
It's one of the things that makes it a really great project to work on because you see it being used. And you see it being used by a whole range of people. It's not just doctors that use it, for example. Doctors do use it, but community organisations use it, government use it.
Government bodies must find it really useful.
drug companies use it, I think, trying to understand. Not that we get any money from drug companies, I have to say. And it's not just within the HIV sector either. I mean, I think organisations that provide housing, if they want to actually understand what HIV is about, if they want to improve their services for people with HIV, they'll have a look at it. Disability services, Centrelink, a whole range of organisations like that. So,
and is it just the survey, or do you actually do one-on-one interviews with people as well?
We do. The survey's the main piece of work that we do, but we do a whole range of other projects that can include what are called qualitative research projects, which basically means like sitting down and talking to people, or focus groups. We do things like policy research, so we look at how policy is developed and how it's implemented. We'll do anything if it's of use to people and it's about living with HIV. That's basically what we'll do.
Wow! And how long does it take to put one of these together?
It's basically, because it comes out every 2 years, it's a continual process. So last time, I think it was, it's madness. Around 6 weeks between when we got the last bit of data back and when the report was launched.
That's really quick.
So I don't sleep for those 6 weeks, and none of my staff sleep for those 6 weeks. We all...
You must have numbers going through your head.
It's scary up there. But we think it's really important to get that information out as soon as possible, so that it's fresh, it's up to date, and it's useful for people right now. And, you know, we don't, for example, a lot of research that happens in universities, you would wait maybe 3 years to get information out from a project, because you'd wait to get it published in a journal, and it'd be a much shorter, much slighter piece of information. But I think that's one of the things that's happened in HIV, is because this isn't something that's happening in ivory towers, it's not something that's happening in isolation. The production of community reports like this has been one of the main things that we've done in HIV research since the beginning. To get the information out in a way that's useful as well, in a form that's fairly accessible and useful to organisations.
Excellent. We're just going to take a short break now, but if you stay with us, we're going to keep chatting to Jeffrey after the break. Hi, I'm Breen. Welcome back to Face to Face for another week. I'm chatting today with the delightful Jeffrey Grierson. Jeffrey does a lot of research on HIV and people living with AIDS. They've got a survey that they're doing at the moment. So how can people be involved in that survey?
Okay, Futures 5 is out at the moment. They can, if they want to complete the survey on the piece of paper, the old-fashioned way, they'll hopefully be able to find that survey almost anywhere that has anything to do with HIV. So,
excellent. So the VAC, or something like that.
PLWHA, their GP. And for the first time this year, we're actually offering it online as well. So you can actually complete the survey online without having to have the actual bit of paper sitting around anywhere.
And is there a web?
There is a website, which is www, of course, hivfutures.org.au.
Excellent.
If you Google HIV Futures, you'll find it anyway. But,
and it's completely confidential?
It's absolutely confidential and anonymous.
And why should people fill it in?
I guess because it actually makes a difference. It's a survey that gives us a really broad understanding of what living with HIV is about. What's really useful about being able to get 1,000 people to tell us this is that organisations get a real sense of the diversity of living with HIV. It's not just the people that they know or the people that come through the door. They actually can understand that there are people out there that might not have told anyone else, including a community organisation, that they've got HIV, and they can look at what life's like for them. they can look at what life's like for people who are doing really well,
yeah,
and don't need particular services.
Yeah.
So it's about, I guess, having your voice heard.
Yeah.
It's about contributing to change. It's
and
about
helping people understand, I guess, the issues that
because
people with HIV face.
This is we're 20 years in, but we still need to know where to provide services, what people's needs are.
Yeah. Well, because it would be changing as well.
Yeah, it changes. Some things don't change when we want them to. But, living with HIV now is very, very different to what it was when I started working in this field in the mid-80s. And getting, for example, government to understand that what living with HIV is like in 2005.
Yeah.
That's really different to what it was like in 1985 is really important.
Yeah,
So,
I can imagine. And what kind of trends come out of this, like in relation to, you mentioned before we started talking about poverty. Is that something that's a problem?
Unfortunately that's one of the things that absolutely hasn't changed over the time we've been doing the surveys anyway. There's about 30% of people with HIV are actually living below the poverty line in Australia.
It's a lot, isn't it?
That's extraordinary, and it's it's utterly unacceptable.
Yeah. Do you know why that is? Is it because they can't find work?
It's a whole range of reasons. I think stigma and discrimination are a big part of that. A lot of it has to do with the fact that if people are unwell or have periods of illness, they might end up on a disability support pension.
Yeah.
And basically, if you're on a disability support pension, you're quite likely to end up below the poverty line. So
I can imagine.
There are big issues sort of at a that affect more than people with HIV, obviously. But
it would be hard to for some people to maintain a full-time job, I can imagine.
Particularly when there still exists discrimination in employment. We still pick that up. It's not as bad or as severe as it would have been in the early years, but it's still there, and we still need to do stuff about that.
Yeah. And what about, is there a difference in the experiences between men and women? What? Yeah,
we report on the women living with HIV in a separate report, as well as they're obviously in the main report.
They get their own special one.
Because the experience of women living with HIV has been different throughout the epidemic, we produce separate data on that. And I guess in a lot of ways the differences have started to disappear over the years. So in terms of things like treatment uptake, access to services, that's improved. But there still are some differences, particularly around things like social support. If you can imagine, a lot of, for gay men particularly, might come from a social network or a group of people that actually might understand a bit about HIV. For a lot of women and heterosexual men living with HIV, their experiences amongst their social network might actually be very different. They might not have heard of HIV before. They might never have met anyone with HIV before. So some of those issues are actually really quite different and a lot harder for some people.
So is there a big difference in, I guess, heterosexual people and homosexual people? Is there a large difference in who does the report? Like, is everyone contributes to it, do you find, or is it different segments? In
that responds to the survey? It's hard to tell because we don't know what bit of the population we're getting to, because this is about the best data you'll get on what people with HIV are like. But my sense is that because we work with so many organisations to get this out, that we get a really representative sample. Positive women's organisations around the country, and people like Straight Arrows and PosHets promote the survey very strongly with their members. So I think we're getting to a lot of people. So there are some groups that won't be well represented in research like this, but
And you, are there any differences you find for Indigenous people? Does that come out in the report?
We again produce a sub-report that details the experiences of Indigenous people living with HIV, and yeah, there are some differences. Discrimination's a bigger issue because it's compound discrimination. It's the combination of being discriminated against for being Indigenous and having HIV.
Yeah.
Health access to health services might be different. And I guess
community attitudes, are there big differences?
I think through other pieces of research that we do as well, we also do a set of Indigenous specific research.
Yeah.
We know that there are both positives and negatives around community attitudes towards Indigenous people living with HIV. So some Indigenous communities are actually incredibly supportive, but the issues of poverty and general health are big issues for some Indigenous communities.
Yeah. We're just going to take a short break. Please stay with us and we'll be back shortly. Hi, I'm Kate Breen. Welcome back to Face to Face. I'm chatting to Jeffrey Grierson today. He's a researcher who does a lot of research on people living with HIV. Just before the break, we were just talking about the survey and your findings from the last survey. I just want to get into that a bit more and maybe talk about the health aspect of it, because people are living with HIV, but are you finding that there's other illnesses that they're suffering as well?
Yeah, I guess we sort of expect with the way that treatments have improved that because people are living longer that people are healthier generally, but we've got around 40% of people have actually got a major health condition in addition to HIV.
And is that related to the HIV? Or?
Sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. Partly it's a mix of things. It's some of the other illnesses might be actually related to the treatments, so heart disease and diabetes and osteoporosis and things like that.
From the medication
From
sometimes.
the medication, so the stuff that keeps you alive can actually make you ill as well.
A lot sicker, yeah.
Some of it's to do with ageing. We've got an ageing population of people with HIV, so we're starting to see a lot of other health conditions come in.
Yeah.
There's also mental health conditions. There's 25% of people are on antidepressants. So the complexity of health, I think, has been increasing. And that's a good thing in some ways because people aren't dying, but so they're actually sticking around. Yeah. But they're having a lot of.
But there's like a double whammy.
Complex,
not only do you have
things
HIV.
like Hep C. I mean, we've got 18% of people in Australia with HIV also have Hep C. Yeah. So the actual management of health, it's not just about HIV. It's about a whole range of things.
Well, because I imagine the immune system is quite low too.
For some people, I mean, when the drugs are working, the immune system. I mean, I'm not a medical doctor. I'll say that.
Right. Yeah.
I
You're a research doctor.
I can't give that advice. But there are some issues that are health issues that are associated with the damage that HIV does to the system directly. But there are others just around living for 15, 20 years on a range of fairly aggressive treatments. I mean, these are not aspirin, the treatments that people are on. They do pretty aggressive things to the body, and so the body suffers.
And these are the antiretroviral drugs.
Yeah, the antiretrovirals, which has been the big thing that's really changed the world in terms of, or at least the developed world in terms of HIV.
Yeah, and out of that has also, I guess, come the fact that people are living a lot longer who are suffering from HIV. So that would be quite interesting, some of the information.
We've been doing some of the analysis on what the differences are between people who have had HIV for a long time and those that are on it now, and the impact is not just in terms of health. I mean, living a long time with HIV has some pretty negative impacts on things like employment and finances and housing and relationships. And the fact that for a lot of the folk that have been living a long time with HIV, they've had a lot of their friends die of HIV. So the sort of social impact of HIV is really important. I think we look, 80% of the people in this study have had someone very close to them die of AIDS. So you're not
That's
living
really
it
tough,
as an
isn't it?
individual in isolation. You're living it in a
Well, you're
in
part
a
of a
social
community,
context.
aren't you?
Yeah.
And were there any findings that you found in terms of relationships and how, if people were telling partners about it, or if they still feel they need to be secretive about it, or if it's a lot more open now?
Yeah, I guess we've got about half the people in the study have a regular partner, which is probably quite low. So there's some real issues around developing particularly long-term relationships.
Yeah.
There are real issues around disclosure, perhaps not so much to romantic and sexual partners, but to things
like
in
your
the workplace.
employer.
There's real issues around workplace and family, and we get a lot of people who've had someone else disclose their HIV status when they didn't want it to, which doesn't always have a negative impact, but can do. So,
well, it's taking away the choice, isn't it, from the person?
There are real issues around disclosure, absolutely.
Yeah. And what about accommodation?
Accommodation, because it's a national survey, that gets really complex. There's not a lot of people actually own their own home, but that probably is true of most of us these days.
Who does? Not me, that's for sure.
There's been real problems with public housing in some states in the last few years, and we've actually been able to bring the data out and say, look, this is what's happening.
This is an issue.
When you put people in the wrong public housing.
Right.
People are actually suffering abuse and harassment in these sorts of public housing, and so housing groups have actually been able to use that data to try and change things. It's not always possible, but
that's good. It's a start, isn't it? At least you're helping.
I think it's always easier to argue with a government department if
you've
got some numbers to wave.
You got this behind
so,
you. And how did you get involved in this?
I guess. Oh gosh, I started out in the Townsville AIDS Council as a young person in sort of mid-80s. Sort of working as a volunteer counsellor with them, and I was doing my psych degree at the time.
So you've done
reformed
a psych
psychologist.
Degree.
So I sort of thought, well, look, I'm a gay man. I'm living in. This was under Bjelke Peterson. Trying to do stuff around HIV. Why not join the academic work and the things I actually care about,
and try and get some data and some information,
and making my entire life, which seems to have happened. So, I guess.
But that's great if it's something you're really passionate about.
Yeah, it's
and it must
really
be very rewarding
area.
for you.
Yeah.
Do you just sometimes go to bed at night and you've just got statistics and data?
Who goes to bed at night?
You're too busy.
That's
tapping away, analysing. Oh, that's great. Thanks very much for coming in today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.